Today, the training we are going to be focusing on the National Emergency Response Information System, or NERIS, and we are honored, and it is my great pleasure to introduce Chief Tom Jenkins from the Fire Safety Research Institute. And he is going to be discussing the Institute's mission with us and share updates on the development and implementation of the NERIS platform, which is a new cloud-based system that enhances data collection for emergency response. Chief, it is all yours.
All right, wonderful. I appreciate you having me here today, Chris, and everybody else with the NEMSIS team. I'll go on camera a little bit so it's a little bit more personified. Um, this is a pretty exciting time in fire data, and really it's not just fire, right? It's all the things that local fire and emergency responders do to interact with communities and handle the risk that is pretty complex and travels a pretty good spectrum. And so I want to share with you what you're doing, what we're doing, why we're doing it, how it does have some touch points, and I think some opportunity for some synergy with NEMSIS. Take any questions you have along the way. I'm a little biased. The last slide that I have for you today has my cell phone, my email. We know for sure that the way in which our federal, our national data systems, both for patient care and for incident response, are designed. There's some opportunity to see them work closer together, better. And so if you have ideas, if you have suggestions, questions, never be bashful about reaching out. So I'll try to brief you as best I can, allocating some time to take any questions, of course, that you have. I'll go through kind of what's going on with NERIS. This is a very aggressive project, due in no small part to the fact that the legacy system, the old data system, the National Fire Incident Reporting System that's been in place in some way, shape, or form for over 50 years, it goes away at the end of the year. That's actually a separate project. And so we have an obligation to make sure that we not only replace that system, but we modernize it, we make it better, we make it more timely. I'll show you a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes, our timeline, and then kind of what the impact might be, including just some, a lot of times I was a career firefighter and fire chief. That's really my only claim to fame. And I try as best I can to equip people with some good real world talking points as to why this system has been designed the way it is, why it's better, and why it's going to be more impactful to what's going on in our country, and really in communities big and small. I always like to start with this quote, that we can't inform or change a problem that we know nothing about, and that's our data problem today. NEMSIS has done a much better job evolving. No system is perfect here, but the legacy system that we're dealing with has remained untouched for decades, and we just have a lot of unanswered questions. You don't have to look very far in the evening news to find that the fire environment is different. The things that we expect our local, municipal, county, district emergency responders to tackle, those problems are different than they used to be. They're more complex. It's not business as usual. And so we have an obligation to make sure that our data system is helping us tell that story. And that's not necessarily, the case today. If you think about, what's going on in fire stations, if you think about the business of emergency response, I'm sure many of you have careers that are just as long as mine or longer. You find that there's a lot of topics there. I spent 15 years as a chief, and in the 15 years I spent as a fire chief running an ALS transport service, mind you, I found that the menu of things that we had to consider for solutions, for problems, for just consideration as leaders within that department, it grew significantly. I guess to say it a little bit more plainly, that the leadership challenges in our local emergency services sector, I think, are greater than their predecessors. And in all of those problems that we have to face, whether those are active shooter, active assailant, whether those are mass casualty incidents, whether those are urban conflagrations and wildfires, whether that's the safety, health, and well-being of our emergency responders, including mental health, not to mention cancer prevalence, which is so common in fire and emergency response organizations, what you find is the common denominator is data. We have to be able to not just tell the story anecdotally and emotionally. We have to be able to justify what we need, where we need to place resources, how we need to allocate our time and our energy in a way that is based on some firm empirical evidence. And so that's important. And what's also important is that you know that the last time our system, if we believe that a common denominator in making good and effective decisions, being a good and effective leader, is that you have to have data and information derived from data. The legacy system that we're replacing, the last time it was touched and really updated, if you were hired on that date, you would be eligible for retirement. And so that's a problem. That, while the conventional mission of many of our fire and emergency response organizations, some components of it have remained unchanged. There are many examples of ways in which it has grown and expanded over the years. The old system was based in paper, and it evolved to digitize, is what they did in the early 90s. That's their word, not mine. They digitized it, computerized it, and it remained a little too static. It wasn't completely imperfect. It just did not grow with what we needed it to do. And we had problems with the timeliness of the information that we could see, especially nationally, the way that the information flowed. And this is just built this way because that's all they had to build it at the time. Is it flowed from a local fire department to the state? The state had to usher that data, help local fire departments correct data. Eventually, that information made its way into Emmitsburg, Maryland, at the National Fire Data Center, part of the United States Fire Administration. The problem is that in that system that's still, alive right now, it can take somewhere between 18 and 24 months to denote emerging trends and problems across the country. Now, if somebody would have told me a few years back when I was still on the job that it took 18 to 24 months to notice a trend nationally, I don't know that I would have initially balked and had much to say about it. But today we deal with problems, an example of which would be the lithium-ion batteries that you see on your screen. Now, lithium-ion batteries, by my memory, came to be something that was part of my vocabulary about 5 years ago. Now, batteries have been around since long before I was on Earth. But lithium-ion batteries, especially those that are subject to what they call thermal runaway, present some firefighting challenges in which we, as firefighters, didn't know whether we were to submerge vehicles that were powered by lithium-ion batteries. Some European countries are carrying around what are basically dumpsters filled with water to submerge these vehicles to combat thermal runaway. Some fire departments believe that you let them burn. Others use conventional firefighting tactics. What I can tell you is one of the reasons we need better and more real-time information is that even today, we really don't know the best way to suppress this fire. And lithium ion is a hazard today, but there'll be something else, and it doesn't have to be fire related, right? We just lived through a pandemic in which having near real-time information about what's going on in our emergency pre-hospital response community, certainly has some value. We can't wait 18 to 24 months to understand these problems, to push research to problems that have a lot of question marks. And so there's just a lot of examples as to why we have to have better and more timely information. Now, we have a wonderful team that works on this project. This project is actually a joint effort from the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Director at the United States Fire Administration, and then the Fire Safety Research Institute at UL. But of all those people holding hands and working together, the most important partner we've had throughout the process has been the fire service, the 1.1 million firefighters, 27,000 some odd fire departments that have contributed in many ways to help design the system. Now, I'm the one firefighter on the project, but that just means I'm their champion. We've had example after example as to how we've modified and gently navigated the design of the system based on the feedback and the information that we've obtained from the fire service, knowing that if there's any example of government being hyper local, it really is the fire service, right? From paid, combination, volunteer, the color of the fire trucks, the tactics they utilize, the services they provide, America's fire service. If you can design a system like this to meet the complexity of how they deliver service, then you're doing okay. Now, NERIS is billed a lot of times as just a replacement for the legacy National Fire Incident Reporting System, but it's more than that. We are more than just replacing the reporting system that's been in place for some time. I don't know that they could have talked me into grabbing a pension and coming to work on the project if that's the only thing what we're doing. What we're trying to do with NERIS is to design a system that never grows stale, that doesn't get cobwebs by revisioning the data schemas, the information, the values, and the questions that we're asking firefighters, providing analytics for the first time. So the system is designed to, I often say, pay a dividend to these departments that participate by giving them information about what they're doing, their risk, their performance. There are plenty of departments that can do that today, but those departments are probably about 1% that really have good, robust analytics platforms to understand those categories of service delivery. Most fire departments, there's a fair number probably don't even know what analytics would be. And so to be able to provide it to them for free of charge, to elevate the ability of our leadership within America's fire service to know a little bit more about the service delivery models and their effectiveness is pretty important. And then, of course, the system architecture and our APIs said more plainly is that we're designing the system to make sure that we recognize that just like fire departments are hyper local, well, we're also more and more hyper connected. That whether it's a third-party records management system, whether it's working with a patient care reporting service, we want to make sure that the system is designed to interop with those systems to grow, expand, and do the things that we need it to do, not just in 2025, but in the decades to come. We want to do is also make sure that we don't create just a filing cabinet of data and connectivity. That one of the things that we're pushing with the project, something that certainly might be of interest to you all as well, is that this is a golden opportunity for a paradigm shift in the fire service. That when I was chief, the way in which we described incident reporting in the legacy system was basically the number one goal was to get the red out of the report, just complete the report. We cared little about timeliness, little about accuracy. That was different with patient care reporting, right? We send firefighters off to EMT and paramedic school, and we do indoctrinate them, I feel appropriately, about the importance of documentation and understanding the interactions, the interventions associated with patient care. But as you can see, we're kind of talking out of both sides of our mouth. And so this is a good opportunity for the fire service to adopt some of the wonderful, ideas that EMS has brought fire in terms of timeliness and accuracy of not just patient care reporting, but incident reporting. And it's with that, through training, that we also provide an opportunity for better and more effective leadership within the fire service. So it's a project that's not just about modernization. It's a project not just about replacing a system. It's a project that's really about changing the DNA of America's fire service to embrace things that are related to data and using it effectively to protect our communities. The system is really designed to do a few things that's just different than anything we've encountered before. We've talked a lot about the incident reporting, like that's the core because that's what we're replacing, that's what we're used to, but it actually starts a little before that, in which, for the first time ever, we will gain an understanding of just how many fire departments that there are in the United States, the number of firehouses they have, the resources in those stations, the staffing levels, the capabilities, the services provided through that fire department profile. One of the things that you may have noticed, I tend to intentionally stumble when I say the some odd 27,000 fire departments. That number varies by about 10%. We don't know how many fire departments there are across the country. And so that's problematic for a few things, not the least of which, when you have an incident of national significance, it's important to know where those closest emergency response resources are. So NERIS solves that problem. Departments that onboard are able to submit information about their department through the department's node. Of course, we are now for the first time collecting a more robust data set, a modernized data set that's going to help us with understanding not just response, the calls we go on, but what we're doing when we arrive on the scene to solve and mitigate the problem. And we're layering that emergency response information in with information from other data sources, whether that's risk models, whether that's sensors, whether that's community demographics, maybe it's weather. And that list is only going to grow. And that really allows us to give information back to leaders in fire departments. Leaders don't have to have gold brass on their collar and use the names like chief. Those could be local company officers, captains, lieutenants. That when we're helping them understand the performance and the type and the nature of a response, that means we're definitely doing something that we can put in the win column. Getting information about 27,000 fire departments plus or minus across the United States is no small feat, especially when you think about large metropolitan fire departments that would have to enter this data. And so we've worked very hard to make sure that we obtain information that exists about the fire departments across the country. So of the 27,000 fire departments that we think are operational in the country, we have information on about 26,000. So what that means is for your local fire department, when they log in, instead of starting from scratch and telling us about their department, their station, their fire trucks, their staffing level, the services they provide, the shifts, the number of firefighters, we've got some of that information. Now it's not going to be all complete. It's not going to be all accurate either. But we have an opportunity for those departments to just really edit it and update it as opposed to start from scratch. Within NERIS, no matter how departments connect the incident information, many fire departments, especially departments of any size, substantial size, are going to continue to use a third-party records management system for the features and the information that they're able to obtain from those services. But within NERIS, they'll be able to see basic level analytics about their department. And that's a menu that will grow over time, and even all the incidents that have been submitted in near real time, which will be substantially different from the model we have currently. What we're really aiming for, and what I try to explain for firefighters, is that we're trying to set up a system that works like many real estate apps. I don't know how many of you have been in the real estate market in the last decade, but I would wager that what you did not do is you didn't go get a catalog. They used to have those catalogs of homes outside restaurants, or at least that's how I remember it. And you go flip through there and look at homes. You didn't do that, or if you did that, you didn't do it as the serious way in which you were going to go look for property because it wasn't near time, right? By the time that catalog's published, some of those homes are off the market, and the information wasn't very relative, and you were limited to the amount of information you can get. Instead, it was most likely that you got a real estate app on a smartphone, and that real estate app included information that was focused on the primary piece of property that you were looking at, information about the square footage, number of bedrooms, bathrooms, stories, and that sort of thing, things that you would expect. But it also layered in third-party definitive data sources. And this is similar to NERIS, right? When we're looking at weather and sensor information and community demographics being brought in to understand incident response and other emergency activities, that real estate app is telling you stuff about schools and crime and walkability and other amenities of a neighborhood, for instance. And so that's the kind of thing that we're trying to create here is data sets that are made more effective by interoperability with other good third-party data sets. When it's all said and done, I just want to make sure. It looks like my camera froze. Can somebody just audio check me? Am I good?
Yes.
Yep, all good.
Okay. I'm not sure why my camera froze, but it had me paranoid that maybe I had lost internet for a second. Um, when it's all said and done, what we're really looking at here is to help communities understand more about the risk that they have within their cities and whatever the political jurisdiction is. I think the question that I just answered is actually a great segue into kind of give you an update on how it's going. We've involved the fire service, like I mentioned, from day one in this project. We received actually in the release of the schemas, we had two groups of basically the questions and values that we were going to be asking and looking for answers for. We received 2,200 comments from the fire service. So some of the best evidence that the fire service is hungry and ready for something better to help them tell their story was in the release of those schemas. We also have two panels, a senior leadership and a technical panel that help to govern and course correct NERIS. And of course, those include a wide variety of folks in different discipline, but of course, the fire service is represented there. Back in March of last year, so about 14, 15 months ago, we prototype test the system. So today, NERIS is alive and well, it's growing, but it started on a very fast pace back in March with fire departments across the country, six of them. Orange County Fire Authority, West Metro Fire District in Colorado, uh, Frisco, Texas, Fairfax County, Virginia, Springdale, Arkansas, Upper Marion Township in Pennsylvania, being those six that helped us, in some of the original design and just kind of identifying some wrinkles. We released the system that was critiqued by the prototype departments out to 56 beta testers back in August of 2024, and then actually released version one became operational right around the 1st of December last year. And the most important thing we have to offer the fire service and the greater emergency response community is a commitment for future improvements and iterations. I had a good conversation with a smaller airport fire department, so kind of a very niche deployment model down in Florida yesterday who had some ideas. And and it's nice to be able to say, hey, those may or may not be good ideas, but we can consider them and we'll be able in due time to if they are actionable to roll them out. Right now, this is what it looks like. So on the screen, you can see the number of departments that have been invited and onboarded. Those are yellow. So those are jurisdiction by jurisdiction, some very large jurisdictions like I can quickly recognize Orange County, California, and San Bernardino County. If they're yellow, that means they are onboarding. Onboarding is kind of a two-part process for us because remember, one of the things that we're doing is collecting information about the different jurisdictions and the services they provide. So that's kind of step one in onboarding is to kind of set up your profile, set up your node. Step two is to start the incident reporting transition. And those various jurisdictions in blue are those that are recognized as pivoting from the old system into the new. But two FEMA regions now have been targeted. Different strategies. It's nice. We're learning a lot about national rollout of things. New York and New Jersey, though, really set the bar high. South Carolina has been wonderful, as have Georgia and Tennessee, and so we're working to incrementally grow our deployment here, and we'll continue month by month with one, sometimes two FEMA regions. Uh, what I would share with you, and maybe something that has some utility is that we try to always say yes. So whether it's a virtual meeting, whether it's an in-person meeting, we try to make sure that anywhere our stakeholders need us, right, from EMS to hazmat to rescue to fire to leadership to folks that are very data centric, we try to make sure that we're there. So we'll do well over, it'll end up being closer to 100 events in 2025, really amping up our marketing and communications because we know that there's always some difficulty in getting out to fire departments. We got about a dozen full-time employees working on the system, and we had one question about what kind of impact have we had with the change in administration, and thus far the only tangible impact that we've had is that we've actually increased our scope of work a little bit to include work on the national fire risk model. So a lot of good news, a lot of work, very short timeline in front of us with which to do it. Wanted to highlight a few things that I thought might be of interest to you. I'll do these quickly only because I want to keep us on time, and I was not planning on a technical issue. These are just four examples of what is a very long list of differences and improvements from the old system to the new. And so I'll just kind of hit those as we go, as opposed to introducing them here. One of the things that we're really looking to understand with NERIS is some better understanding of property use and community risk reduction. The old system allowed you to, basically say where did the call occur, no matter what kind of call it was. What we're trying to do is to take it beyond that and give firefighters and responders an opportunity to give us insight into the type of building, the occupancy, whether or not it was in use, whether it was vacant, whether it was in a state of disrepair, and even with those attributes, being able to say that there were still people present, because we know in communities big and small, housing insecure populations are robust, if not on the rise. And so to be able to understand risk as associated with the presence of people in properties that they should not be is important. We're also able to collect community risk reduction information, both in incident response. One of the things that it's an optional submission, but when we have these firefighters out there making emergency medical calls, we're allowing them, providing them an opportunity to tell us, when they were on that EMS call, did that house have a smoke alarm? Did that apartment have a sprinkler system? That doesn't necessarily exist in any kind of database. There's exceptions locally, but to know in a community where you might need to put some emphasis on hazard reduction is pretty important. So we have that within our system. A good example is of this importance is this recent fire in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This happened in January of this year. And as you can see, that kind of looks like a church, and it was a church. But this type of church is one that they're not holding service on a Sunday. This is an abandoned church. These firefighters responded to this church and found an abandoned church, but there were people present. And these types of buildings in the real world, to be able now to make sure that the Tulsa Fire Department in this particular circumstance understands that risk, especially over maybe in a certain city council district or ward, allows them to take some action to improve what's going on with the building stock in their community. We're also looking for ways to integrate response data into risk information. So one of the things that is common is that, you'll have a fire. This is a real payload, an API payload on a simulated room and contents fire occurring in a neighborhood in Pennsylvania, to be able to understand that something bad happened in a specific area, but then to also be able to tell the story about what we did to not just respond, but do things to prevent and mitigate future similar incidents through, in this case, a simulated smoke alarm saturation event, allows us not only just to illustrate what the fire service does for communities beyond emergency response, beyond things that have to do with a 911 call, it also allows us to determine effectiveness of this sort of thing, especially within the neighborhoods and geographic subdivisions of a community that are maybe very prone to certain types of risk. And it's not just fire, right? It's EMS that you find these EMS calls, maybe a certain address within a community in which we've responded 12 times to 9 medical emergencies and 3 lift assists, and whether or not a risk reduction activity like installing bathroom grab bars and instructing that potential person on medication administration for themselves, does that have an impact on the incidence of response to that particular address or across a whole complex of people that are prone to needing our services? And so we're trying just to understand these things better than we ever have before. Within NERIS, you're able to do more than just tell us one thing that you did. The way the old system was built was that you had to select one incident type to tell the whole story. Now, I don't know, probably 99% of the time that works, but there are certainly instances in which you respond to a complex emergency that one incident type is just not sufficient. I would compare it to EMS, right? That how often do we go to patients in which the issues that we're dealing with are there multiple systems, multiple organ systems. We have both a primary and a secondary impression of the patient and what's going on, and so we're allowing that sort of thing now with the all hazards and fire centric nature of our fire departments to be able to tell the story. We're also capturing information that we've never gathered before. Information about situations involving maydays, or these are, times in which firefighters are lost, trapped, entangled, disoriented, low on air. There was no official record of how often do we have firefighters who find themselves in these oh my gosh circumstances. How often and in what types of circumstances do we rescue civilians? Do we rescue household pets? How often do we displace people uninjured? But how often do we potentially contribute to the housing insecure population in a community through hostile fire? And we also allow within our system the ability to flagging incidents to say, hey, this involved a violence against a firefighter. It was a federal disaster was what this response was associated with. Active shooters, MCIs, and I think that list will continue to grow. Now, it's easy to say that these kinds of multiple incident situations are not very common. I don't know that I even liked it when I first joined the project and started the conversation, but you don't have to look very far to find examples of incident responses that are just difficult to put into a singular category. You see here Lubbock, Texas, a hazmat crew responds to a spilled chemical after a train versus tractor trailer crash. So you have a train collision, you have a tractor trailer collision with injury, you have a hazardous materials leak, or in the District of Columbia, where we have a vehicle into a building with a woman trapped and the building catches fire. We could debate in the old system the best way to categorize these calls. The one thing I know with a great deal of certainty is that will only tell part of the story. And so we're wanting to do a better job of telling a complete story as to the kinds of complex incidents that our firefighters respond to. The other thing we're trying to do is to do a better job of understanding what we do upon arrival. Right now, we focus greatly on what we find and how long it takes us to get there. And those are important things. Incident type and response times are important, but what we do when we get there and how well we do it are important too. So we have a modernized and robust list of actions and tactics that firefighters are able to select to understand what they do to solve problems. We're also gathering information on tactical timestamps. These tactical timestamps, which include when commands establish, when you assess the scene, when you complete suppression, when you start to search a building, are optional right now. But in the long run, I think this will be important to departments that understand that just because you get there in a time frame that is exceptional doesn't mean that necessarily the outcome is what you want it to be. The last thing we've done that I would just share with you that is probably noteworthy is we've streamlined interagency aid. In the old system, we basically asked firefighters about did you get mutual aid or automatic aid, and firefighters, in my experience, spent an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out what the difference was between the two. And the truth is, it didn't matter, right? What really mattered doesn't matter if it was mutual aid or automatic aid. Usually, the rapidity of the aid was dictated by who the 911 center was, who's dispatching those agencies. If it happened to be the same center, you could get it in a much more time-sensitive manner than if they had to go dispatch center to dispatch center. What we've tried to do is just have firefighters tell us that when you help other departments or you receive help, tell us the direction and tell us, did you get help in support of a big incident? Did you get help from another agency because you were out of resources or that agency was closer? Aid in lieu of, kind of the middle picture there. Or in some circumstances, we have jurisdictions that act as another authority under contract. This is especially true in the wildfire arena, especially out west. And so just being able to allow firefighters to tell us in a more simple manner will help us to understand the oftentimes complex relationships regarding aid between jurisdictions. Also, in our system, for the first time, we're able to denote whether or not support aid from non-fire department resources was used to help solve the problem. Whether it's law enforcement, social services, animal housing, utility companies, or remediation services, we're able to denote that. Not a lot of depth there yet, but I think in the years to come, we'll find that departments want more information about these non-fire department resources because I think due to the nature of our communities and their dependence on us, it's more likely that we'll be working as a team with some of these other entities, more than ever before, certainly more than we are now. So we're in the middle of a transition year. I told you a little bit about the onboarding process, and I showed you that map. There's those two colors. And so that yellow color meant, hey, you did that step one. The blue color meant you did that step two. And we will see that that changes every day. That's actually I don't know what this says about me and my hobbies. That's actually the first thing I do every morning is I refresh that dashboard. I look at it. It grows every day. It's kind of fun to see that coming to fruition after such a aggressive timeline. And this is the onboarding schedule for the various regions across the country. So not knowing the composition of everybody on the call today, what I would ask you to do is that if you do represent an emergency response organization and you think you might be somebody who can help clear things up, reaching 27,000 fire departments and making it very clear to them the onboarding process is way easier said than done. And so it is my belief that even peers and folks that may not necessarily be officially involved in the project, sometimes them understanding how we're doing it serves to help us as we migrate across the country. I mentioned to you we've done both FEMA regions 2 and 4. We're just a few days in on FEMA region 4. I'm happy to report that I took a fair amount of Advil actually with FEMA region 2. It went good. It could have gone smoother. We were able to iron out those wrinkles for FEMA Region 4. It's more states, it's more departments. It's actually gone better. So knock on wood, we want to continue that trend. It's always good to embody some continuous improvement into the way in which we're deploying this stuff. I've mentioned the information that we're collecting during onboarding. This is just kind of a bulleted list for you to see. It's not a small list that besides kind of just the basic inventory of response assets and staffing, one of the things I should mention is that second bullet that we're gathering geospatial information about the various entities and departments that we want to know their boundaries. And that will help us as incidents are submitted, as we get other data sets, that really helps us to provide them analytics that have a geospatial characterization to them. For departments, most departments, of any size, as I mentioned, will use a third-party records management system. The connecting to those vendors is simple. That's self-service. Those departments, as they onboard, are able to say, "Hey, I'm using, XYZ software vendor." They enter that information into their integration enrollment into the dashboard and node of their department. Shockingly, I mean, anytime that you're having departments entering, API tokens and stuff, that's not something we're training them to do in the Fire Academy. Knock on wood, that's actually gone really good so far. I would be remiss if I did not mention that, we have dozens of technology vendors, records management companies, CAD systems. They have been real partners in this that, because we wanted to be able to say, and it was important that we were able to say, we built this with the fire service. That meant that those various software companies, technology partners really didn't have a good blueprint to go off of until about October of last year. It's not very long ago. And they've been with us all the way. Not to say that they probably haven't been frustrated with us from time to time based on our time frame, but they're not any more frustrated with us than we are anxious about the timeline too. So this project would not be successful if it wasn't for those software vendors. So for those of you that work with them or know them, they really they have my admiration for stepping up to the plate and working, I feel, as hard as we are on the project. This will leave me a few minutes for questions and conversation. As I mentioned to you, my bias before, there's a lot of stuff on here. If you want to know what's going on with NERIS, probably that QR code is the best way to go. We've got a full-blown communication team that's pushing stuff out there, making sure that if firefighters want to know what's going on, they can get that information. But my bias is that if you need something, you can find my contact information on the very bottom line. That's my email, that's my cell phone. I'm on the phone and receiving text all the time. I think that it's important for the fire service to know that they've got a touch point in this, monumental process of transition, and that's extended to you all. That if you need something from us, if you need our presence at a meeting, if you have a sudden emotional outburst, you need to get off your chest regarding NERIS, we're here for you. And we want to make sure that we continue to listen. We oftentimes remind ourselves that we're not creating the perfect system, but we are very much dedicated to making it as near perfect as possible. So with that, I will kind of pause and just see if we've got any questions, if somebody doesn't mind kind of being the air traffic controller.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chief Jenkins. It's great information, and a big virtual round of applause to you for dealing with that technical issue, and for everyone for sticking around. That was really great.
Yeah, that's the
Um,
real applause. Yeah.
yeah, I'm looking forward to this the outcome information about how many cats are getting rescued out of
Me
trees.
too. Me
That'll
too.
be.
Me too.
Um, we do have a question here from Jim, who is going to ask, will there be a way to track if a fire department is unable to respond?
Yes. So one of the things that we are able to do within the individual departments and units is to denote that they were unable to muster a response. So that was an early on a request to note that. So yes, that is a capability within there to show that a department and a unit was dispatched but unable to respond.
Wonderful. If we give just a couple seconds here to still see, is there any more questions? If not, as you said, you have all of your contact information here. If there are any other questions that come up later, we will, and they come to us through our ticketing system, we will be sure to get those over to you so that you can answer those.
Hey, that's great. That's
Uh,
great. Everybody, feel free to reach out
oh,
anytime. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, we do have one question here. Let me get this over so that everybody can see it. Okay, so from Melissa, we are saying, can you repeat what onboarded means? Uh, that means the fire department demographic information has been submitted, uh, or test incidences have been submitted, or they are still submitting data in NFIRS.
Yeah, that's a good question, Melissa. So I could probably I might need to wordsmith something other than just onboarded. So I've been using onboarded and fully onboarded. So let me tell you what that means. We've got about 3,700 departments that have been onboarded, and what that means is that those departments, as you say, have updated their demographic information, which would also include their geospatial boundary. They've set their users within the national system, so they've figured out who needs access to it and that it's basically a 1-2 punch, and they just did the first punch. They're just sitting there and they're ready to go. Does not mean they have fully onboarded and that they're reporting their incident data into NERIS yet. And so many of those departments, they have to wait for their records management vendors to be ready. Um, and they also have to wait, for their FEMA region. So that we're only into, two FEMA regions. So when we say onboarded, that is really just that first thing, just that demographic information, the kind of baseline data about the department has been completed. The departments that have fully onboarded and have transitioned from the legacy info system over are just under 50 right now. So I expect probably by the end of that month that will quadruple. So we see a pretty exponential increase as anticipated as we roll through these FEMA regions. The ones who have transitioned incidents, the vast majority of them are smaller departments. Smaller departments can use a free incident data collection app that we have. They're just easier to transition because they're not having to mess with a third-party software. There's not as much necessary benefit to them. It's a pretty conventional meat and potatoes system. But we do have our first API connected department and a metro fire department that was Chesapeake, Virginia, transitioned last month. So we really do have big and small that have fully onboarded, but we expect to see that increase pretty substantially in the weeks to come.
Fantastic, thank you. I don't see any more questions, and we're just about out of time, so I'm just going to give a quick sign off here. Like I said, if you get any more questions, please feel free to send them to our ticket system. We will get them over to Chief Jenkins. Also, if you'll check the chat window at the moment, Lori has also posted uh, conveniently his email address so that you can copy and paste it out of the chat. On behalf of everybody from the NEMSIS TAC, thank you so much for this presentation and this information. Looking forward to continued partnership with your initiative, seeing all the amazing things that they're going to be that you and they're going to be doing in the coming years. Um, for the participants here, want to let you know again that if you want to be notified about this and other events that the NEMSIS TAC is doing, please sign up for our listserv at the homepage or follow us on most major social media at NEMSIS TAC. With that, thank you very much, Chief Jenkins. Hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for your time and the information, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Chris.